Bien, bonjour et bienvenue à notre réunion de midi en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes le mercredi 21 décembre. Nous avons une seule annonce pour vous aujourd'hui et pour cela, j'appelle Stéphane qui a des nouvelles sur notre soutien à la transition climatique en Europe.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today, together with the European Investment Bank, we're announcing the disbursement of, under the Modernization Fund, of a total of 4.11 billion euros. These funds support 61 projects in 8 beneficiary countries this year, 2022. The investment projects take place in Croatia, Czechia, Estonia, Hungary, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia. The projects will focus on electricity generation from renewables, modernization of energy networks, and energy efficiency in different sectors, the energy sector, industry, buildings, transport, and on the replacement of coal generation with lower carbon intensity fuel. The fund is funded by revenues from the auction of emission allowances from the EU's emission trading system, and it aims to support 10 EU countries with lower incomes in their transition to climate neutrality. In the provisional deal reached on the strengthened EU emissions trading system on 18 December, the Modernization Fund will increase its size. It will offer financial assistance to 3 additional member states with their transition. As usual, you will find lots of interesting information in our press corner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stéphane, that's all that we have for you today, so now we can move to your questions. Andy. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Afternoon, Eric. Former Commissioner Avramopoulos had several meetings, as we now know, with commissioners during the time when he was not supposed to lobby on behalf of fight impunity. Do you know if he did discuss any issues relating to human rights or impunity with those commissioners, or indeed anything relating to Qatar? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, as announced on Monday, we have carried out internal checks within the Commission related to former Commissioner Avramopoulos' post-mandate activities. Indeed, and as you say, we note that he visited various commissioners, at least on the dates of 15th to 17th of November 2021, for what the commissioners describe as short courtesy visits, courtesy meetings to basically former colleagues or to his successor, Ylva Johansson, or to an old acquaintance, Stella Kyriakides. So in none of these meetings, from what we understand, was he representing the NGO for which he had requested post-mandate activity authorization, nor were any such issues discussed. Now, he has also met on occasion former colleagues for short private encounters, notably when these colleagues were in Greece. So, nevertheless, the Commission is writing to former Commissioner Avramopoulos to obtain further information into how he respected the conditions set out in his post-mandate activity. And we're also asking him to provide information on basically how he represented this NGO during the period between the date of the authorization and the end of his cooling off period. Now, we'll continue, of course, to check for any further possible information related to the activities of the NGO Fight Impunity that could be related to the Commission. And of course, if there is any news, we will inform you. Finally, let me remind you as well You know that there's another NGO which has been in the media, which is called No Peace Without Justice, which has had a number of contracts with the, or rather, to which the Commission had awarded grants. And as we had announced last week, already we have suspended payments to this NGO pending further verifications. That's what I can say today on this. Follow up, Andy?
Yes, please. What is the sanction for a former commissioner who breaks the 2-year no lobbying rule?
This is a question which I would ask Balázs to answer. Let me remind you, sorry, before giving the floor to Balázs, as I had said, the conditions that are set for former members, in this case, former Commissioner Avramopoulos, relate to them representing the NGO, in this case, right, when they have contact with the Commission. Of course, there's nothing stopping a former member of the college, and that's quite natural, from having a courtesy meeting with a former colleague. Okay, so we really need to distinguish between these two things. Balázs.
Yes, and then on the code of conduct and the consequences of breaking the terms of the code of conduct, the Commission has a number of tools or means at its disposal to follow up when it comes to such a scenario. A lot depends on individual circumstances, and of course, what we do will have to reflect the degree of breach. Now, one example is a public reprimand. The Commission has in the past resorted to this tool, and in very grave cases, the Commission can also turn to the Court of Justice and refer the case to the court.
But let me be very clear. You have asked a theoretical question. We have given you a theoretical answer, okay? We have no indications at this stage of any need for this. We have asked the commissioner, the former commissioner, for clarifications, which I think is in his interest as well as in ours. Mose, on this, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Yes, a kind of follow-up question about the Greek former commissioner Avramopoulos. Maybe I asked it before. I mean, I understand that this NGO Fight Immunity has not been funded by the Commission in any way. But then the question is whether those former commissioners who accepted the post as honorary members of the board, if they have been in a way remunerated, received any payment from the NGO. I mean, is the Commission, do you think, going to ask him about that also in this follow-up of this? That is my question. Thank you.
Sorry, Mose, but you're a bit behind the curve here. The authorization that we gave him actually says explicitly that for a period of 1 year he was remunerated by the NGO. And this is something that we discussed at length on Monday. So, voilà, just so that to make it clear, and he, former Commissioner Avramopoulos, has confirmed it himself. So there's no need to specify this, it's a known fact. All right, good. Follow up? Hold on, wait until it's read.
Yes, right. Then comes the follow-up, or perhaps theoretical question. In this case, I mean, could that be also affected by any sanctions by the Commission if it now turned out that they've been remunerated by suspected NGO, which might have received its revenue in an illegal way? Thank you.
Balázs has told you what are the possible theoretical mechanisms that the Commission has at its disposal in case a former member of the college does not respect the obligations. This is not linked to whether they have been paid or not. It's linked to the fact that they have or not respected the authorization. Okay, I see no further questions on this. Any other question on this as well?
Just a follow-up.
Hold on, wait until, you always need to wait.
Sorry, green. I always want to speak on green. Can you change it so it's red's not speak and green is speak? Anyway. On the other charity, No Peace Without Justice, have you specified or can you specify how much in grants the Commission gave? Thanks.
So go ahead. We have a system that allows us, of course, to track the number of grants that have been awarded, or if we're talking about supplying goods or services to the Commission, contracts that have been awarded. So indeed, we have a list. Let me specify that we're going through the details at this point in time. So we will come back to this because we need to verify a certain number of things. But fundamentally, this is an NGO with which we have been working for a number of years, that has received a certain number of grants, carried out a certain number of contracts, from what I understand, satisfactorily. That could also be receiving or awarded a further grant. So we are checking the details, but as I say, at the moment, we are suspending things pending further verifications. Yeah, follow up.
Okay. And did those grants start before the relationship with Fight Impunity in 2019? And also, have there been any grants to Fight Impunity itself? Thanks.
Sorry, first of all, I don't get the point about links between that and Fight Impunity. We would not be in a position to know that, right? We have what we call legal entities. One entity is Fight Impunity, with which, as I've already said here a number of times, the Commission has not had any contractual relationship in the sense of awarding grants. And there is another legal identity, which is distinct, which is No Peace Without Justice, with which the Commission has been working, indeed, for a number of years, largely actually before this mandate. Okay, Mose.
That brings me to another follow-up question, because I think I read in the media that there is some kind of link between these two NGOs, and that the second NGO, the new NGO, Fight Immunity, maybe is a kind of successor to the previous one, or they were both being established by the same former Italian member of parliament. Can you confirm that? Do you know anything about that?
Mose, you're asking a question to the wrong person. As I say, we have no relationship in terms of awarding grants with Fight Impunity. We also read the newspapers, obviously, and we have seen a certain number of things which have been written about both organizations, which is also why we have been doing the checks on No Peace Without Justice and suspended the payments. But obviously, these are questions that you should address to the investigators, not to us. Okay, I see no further up. Is it on this? Yeah, go ahead.
It's on Qatar at least, so I hope it's the right. So my question would be: is there, or when can we expect something on the ethics body that President von der Leyen said should be also adopted in the other institutions? And yeah, talks are going on about this. Can we expect anything on that anytime soon?
Well, as things stand, there have been technical contacts in the course of this year, and now there are political contacts at the level of Vice President Jourova with her counterparts in the other institutions. What we're hoping for is that a consensus emerges that allows us to come forward with a proposal that will be met with approval by the other institutions. But I have no timing that I can give you. Okay. Any other question for us today on this? Sorry? Marco, if you want to ask a question? Ah, yeah, okay. I couldn't see your hand raised. Go ahead, Marco. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No, I mean, your mic seems to be turned on, but we can't hear you. I'm sorry. While you try to solve this issue, and assuming that the other people who have raised their hand also want to ask about this issue, I go to Mathieu.
Oui, bonjour. Est-ce que tu peux nous dire quel est le délai de réponse pour l'ancien commissaire Avramopoulos à la lettre que vous lui avez transmise? Est-ce que la Commission compte modifier le code de conduite pour interdire aux anciens commissaires européens de collaborer avec des ONG, des entreprises qui ne sont pas inscrites dans le registre de transparence européen? Ça semble être quand même la moindre des choses. Et après, sur le comité européen, ce qui est étonnant, c'est que dans le programme législatif de travail qui a été adopté la semaine dernière, il y a, dans la liste des initiatives qui sont mentionnées, il n'y a aucune référence au comité européen d'éthique. Merci.
Excuse-moi Mathieu, j'ai raté ta dernière question. Il n'y a aucune référence où au comité d'éthique européen?
Dans l'initiative interinstitutionnel qui a été validé la semaine dernière, donc il y a un tableau avec une liste d'une soixantaine de propositions, mais il n'y a aucune référence au mot éthique, comité d'éthique européen.
D'accord, merci. Il n'y a pas de délai de réponse particulier dans la lettre qui va lui être envoyée. Elle ne lui a pas encore été envoyée, hein. J'ai dit que nous étions enfin, je pense que j'ai dit que nous sommes en train de lui écrire. Il n'y a pas de délai de réponse particulier, mais je suis persuadé que l'ancien commissaire Avramopoulos aura tout autant intérêt à clarifier les choses que nous le plus rapidement possible. Je trouve que tu vas très vite en besogne en disant qu'il faudrait interdire à tout ancien membre du collège de travailler pour une ONG qui n'est pas inscrite dans le registre de transparence. Il y a plein d'ONG qui travaillent dans le secteur humanitaire, social ou que sais-je, qui n'ont absolument pas pour vocation de travailler avec les institutions européennes. Pourquoi devrait-on dire à un ancien commissaire qui ne peut travailler qu'avec des organisations qui sont inscrites dans nos registres de transparence? Ça ne me semble pas couler de source. Et je te rappelle, encore une fois, un petit peu de prudence. Nous sommes dans un stade où simplement nous demandons des clarifications et des vérifications. Donc, je crois qu'il ne faut pas mettre la charrue avant les bœufs, comme on dit. En ce qui concerne l'accord interinstitutionnel, c'est un travail qui est déjà en cours, ce travail sur le comité d'éthique. Je n'ai pas en tête le processus qui a mené à la finalisation de la dernière version, mais en tout cas, c'était dans les priorités politiques de la présidente. Nous avons eu des contacts cette année. Le travail est en cours avec les autres institutions. Donc, je ne vois pas de raison particulière pour essayer de donner une date particulière ou quoi que ce soit dans un texte spécifique. Mathieu, tu as une question de suivi.
Oui, c'est vrai que ma question n'était pas assez précise, mais c'est quand je parle des ONG ou des...
Nous t'avons perdu, Mathieu.
Je pensais à celles qui ont des activités spécifiques. Vous m'entendez?
Avec des coupures.
Ouais, désolé.
Et ça serait bien si tu pouvais brancher ta caméra. Je rappelle encore une fois qu'à partir de janvier, ça deviendra obligatoire.
D'accord. Mais bon, là, vu l'état de ma voix, je ne voudrais pas m'afficher en spectacle parce que mon visage n'est pas forcément le plus gratifiant. Mais simplement, la question, je devais effectivement préciser ma question, mais quand il s'agit d'ONG ou d'entreprises, je pense à des entités qui ont des activités spécifiques et liées aux affaires européennes. Donc à partir du moment où ces entités travaillent dans les affaires européennes mais ne sont pas inscrites au registre, ça me semblerait quand même normal que quelqu'un qui a eu autant de responsabilités qu'un commissaire et ne travaille pas avec ce genre d'entité qui ne respecte pas les règles qu'elle devrait respecter.
D'accord, je comprends ton point. Mathieu, tout ce que je peux dire, c'est que notre responsabilité à nous, c'est de s'assurer que nous mettons des conditions claires qui concernent le commissaire dans ses contacts avec les anciennes institutions. Et maintenant, évidemment, s'il contacte les anciennes institutions au titre d'une ONG ou d'une autre organisation, d'ailleurs, entreprise ou quoi que ce soit, il faut que cette organisation soit dans le registre. Voilà ce que je peux dire aujourd'hui. Je ne vais pas spéculer sur des changements ou non à apporter. Et encore une fois, nous sommes dans un stade simplement de vérification d'informations. Okay, let's try to go back to Marco. No luck. No, I'm sorry, Marco. We will do this bilaterally afterwards. Okay? No, I'm sorry. We are going now to Tommaso.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tommaso.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the floor. It's just a question, a general question. I mean, forgive me for being blunt, but I wonder if beyond all this mess on Qatar, Morocco, and everything, does the Commission think really that we can go on without Qatar, which is a very important partner as far as gas supply is concerned? I mean, usually these kind of things are settled with offering the head of a minister. It's a metaphor, of course. When do you think, or do you hope that the bilateral relationship with Qatar could be normalized? Thank you.
I'm not aware that it's not normal, the relation with Qatar. So I don't know how to answer your question, Tommaso. We have a process which is taking place here in Europe. Let me remind you that at this point in time, there is a judicial inquiry that is taking place, which has not come to its conclusions. The European Union has diplomatic relations with Qatar. As the President said in this very press room on Monday last week, we work with Qatar on global, regional, and bilateral issues, and this continues. Thanks. Angela.
Yes, thank you. Maybe I missed something. Of course, the No Peace Without Justice, or NGO, is in the transparency register, I guess. This is the first question. Second question, I'm going to help Marco with this question, as he wrote it in the chat. As you said on Monday that you contacted Avramopoulos for asking clarification, and you're carrying out an internal verification. Does this mean that you have any indication that he did not follow the conditions of the authorization, or you are simply changing the strategy? Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Angela, and thanks for helping out your colleague. It's much appreciated. On your second question, we are simply asking for clarifications, okay? So it does not mean anything at this stage. It is simply, for us, important to be able to verify that all the conditions have been met. in relation to the authorization that was granted to him. On your first question on the transparency register is available to the public, so I would urge you to avail of the possibility that you have and to go and check. What is clear is that it's an organization with which we have contacts. Christian, you have information on this.
Yeah, I can perhaps quickly clarify that indeed, as Eric said, it's publicly available, but we checked, of course, and so the first organization, Fight Impunity, has never been registered, and the other NGO, No Peace Without Justice, was registered, but has been suspended from the register on the 13th of December.
So this is linked to what I was saying previously to the suspension on the award of grants. But in any case, you know, if you get an award from the Commission, obviously you are known to us. Award of a grant, you are known to us. Okay, any further questions for us on this today? Mose, last one. I'm sorry.
Sure, it's probably the last question on this before the Christmas break. I just want to take opportunity to ask, as we know now that the former Greek commissioner was paid, got remuneration from Fight Immunity, you perhaps can expect the other former commissioners who also were members of the board, like Federica Mogherini and the Swedish one, Cecilia Wikström, might also have been remunerated. And then the question is, have you also sent letters for clarification to those two former commissioners?
Mose, the other, at least Mrs. Mogherini, did not make a request for authorization because her relationship with the organization was after her cooling off period. This is a very important point to remember, and I thank you for raising it again. When you are a commissioner, you are not bound to the Commission's rules forever when it comes to the activities that you can carry out, okay? And so if you respect the cooling off period, after the end of the cooling off period, you are free to engage in any professional activity that you want. And this was the case. For Mrs. Mogherini. Okay, I see there's one other hand raised. Suniva.
Hi. Sorry, I wanted to put my camera on. Now I don't know how to do it now that I started talking. Sorry about that. It's just a question on a very different topic, if you don't mind. It's about critical infrastructure, because the Washington Post just reported there's no evidence at this point that Russia was behind the sabotage of Nord Stream pipelines in September. Would you be able to comment, just considering the EU said they'd support investigations aimed at getting full clarity on what happened? Thank you.
I'm looking at my colleagues to see whether there is anything that we can say on this, but I do not see, so we will have to check and possibly come back to you bilaterally, Suniva. Anything else for us today? Mose, last question. Yeah.
It relates to the issue discussed yesterday about the sanctions against Russia and Iran for the drones. I think that Peter explained it yesterday and a bit, but it's still not so clear. And I also talked to him this morning. The question is, what do we know about the member states' actions now after the decision of the sanctions? Because I understand that they are expected by the Commission to take action against those companies in their countries which have been apparently exporting engines or other parts to Iran for their production of drones, which has been delivered to Russia in the war against Ukraine. And so do we know if there have been now an immediate, let's say, stop in that supply chain?
Mose, my understanding is that the sanctions have put in place an authorization regime for exports, which is a completely different issue, but Peter will specify.
Indeed, Mose, two things. So when it comes to sanctions, the EU has already taken decisions on two occasions to sanction Iran for the deliveries of drones to Russia, which are used to attack the civilian infrastructure and kill Ukrainian civilians. That's one thing. The other thing, what the European Union adopted, and the member states of the European Union adopted in the 9th package, is obligatory for the EU entities. It's valid on the EU territory. That means each company, each enterprise, each entity has the obligation to respect these sanctions, and it's the member states who are in charge, responsible and competent to oversee and implement the sanctions. And if there are violations of the sanctions or breakages of the sanctions, then the authorities of the member state concerned are supposed to act. And if they don't act, then the European Commission will enter the game. But at this stage, the implementation of the sanctions is the responsibility and the duty of the member states.
Okay, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of the midday briefing. It is going to be the last midday briefing of the year. And so I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Have a great break and see you early January.